It's a challenging time for many families right across the country.
It's really gone downhill in the last 10 years.
Before, we were making changes so that we could save up for our future, and today downgrading vehicles is next.
Wasn't Canada a rich country? In Toronto, the most common household income is $91,000. After income taxes and other taxes, the median household still makes nearly $50,000 per year. That's over $4,000 per month. How can you not make ends meet? Saving for a down payment apparently takes 24 years on this income level. So you're not buying, you're renting. I found that a one-bedroom apartment on average costs about $2,300. So you still have about $1,800 left. Let me see. Average expenditure per household. Wait, this cannot be right. Canadians spend over $90,000 on average in 2021. That's almost the same as the average income. So how does that work?
We have 30-year-olds living in their parents' basements. We have seniors who watch their savings evaporate.
I found this other graph that shows if you're in the top 40% of earners, you manage to save money every year. But if you're in the bottom 60% of earners, you likely spend more than you earn.
I thought Justin Trudeau might have learned the lesson.
Everywhere I go on the internet, I keep seeing this man, Pierre Poilievre. He now looks poised to become the next Prime Minister of Canada. So let's take a look at Canada's affordability crisis with hindsight.
Why are people so angry? And the answer is that they're hurting. I have never seen so much hurt and so much pain and suffering in our population in my nearly 2 decades in politics.
Of all advanced economies, Canada is forecasted to be the worst performing in the long term, and people have noticed.
If you're one of the 38-year-olds living in your parents' basement because it now takes more to own a house than at any time, it's not so easy to be happy with the way things are going.
These last 2 years, Poilievre has capitalized on these problems and scored several viral hits by finding clever ways of presenting these issues. This helped him with his ranking in the polls. But before we get into that, let's see how affordability has changed over time. In 1981, Canada was a different place. It was a time of great economic uncertainty, and buying a house already seemed impossible. The interest rate for a conventional 5-year mortgage reached a record of 18.4%. What I did is I gathered data from house prices in 1981 and I compared those to more recent figures. And my first finding is that affordability over time really depends on where you are. A house in Toronto cost on average about $70,000, which was 4.5 times the median household income. Today, the median house price is almost 12 times the median income. But if you look at other cities like Vancouver, the decreased affordability is less extreme. Whereas some cities, like Calgary, have actually become more affordable. So it comes down to this. How much has your income increased versus how much have prices increased over that same period? And the bad news already starts with income. In 1980, a family in Ontario made on average $97,000 in today's money. This is less than today, but the average percentage paid on federal, provincial, and local taxes has increased substantially. And this is not the only cost that has increased. The price of gasoline, food, and electricity have all outpaced income. And whereas an education in 1980 cost on average $2,200 if adjusted for inflation, now it's well over $17,000. This trend, where the cost of living is rising faster than people's income, has accelerated in recent years. And the part that worries me is, where will this lead? If this continues, it will eventually reach a point where people won't be able to afford all essential items. That point has already been reached by 1 in 4 Canadians, who by this definition already live in poverty. I am going to dive deeper into this, but first a quick word from my sponsor. So one of my biggest frustrations in life is people that are trying to scam me. I don't know how it is where you live, but over here I receive phone calls all the time of people that are trying to tell me lies. They're trying to tell me that my account has been wrongfully set up or that somebody's trying to steal from me, but in the end it is they that are trying to rob me. And that's why I couldn't be more grateful to have today's sponsor, Incogni. Incogni is a service that goes out on your behalf to take your data off lists that data brokers are using to send you spam, to call you with offers, and this can get nasty really fast. I signed up in December, and my data has already been removed from 44 lists, and 6 are currently in progress. It just feels comforting to know that they are always there working in the background to take back my personal data. If you want to try it for yourself, go to incogni.com/hindsight and apply the code hindsight at checkout to get a 60% discount on a yearly plan. Thanks again Incogni for supporting the channel and sponsoring this video, and now let's go back to Canada. Since 1980, the average household income in Canada has increased by 14%. And that's where the good news ends. Everything else has gotten more expensive. Canadians now pay more on taxes, electricity, gas, and about everything that you can think of. The bottom line is that if your income doesn't rise faster than prices, affordability declines. This puts, for many, the dream of starting a family out of reach. Let's look at Toronto, where a one-bedroom apartment costs over $2,300 on average. Moving into a two-bedroom apartment would cost you more than $700 extra per month. That's a lot of money, and it's not nearly the end of it. Childcare is very expensive. Canadians pay on average 28% of their income on childcare, which is amongst the highest in the world. Starting a family is just not feasible for many, even if they wanted to have kids. And this is aggravated by the fact that Gen Z and millennials are now deep in debt. The total consumer credit card debt in Canada stands at $2.5 trillion, of which almost half is held by people under the age of 45, the age group that's most likely to want and have children. It might not come as a surprise that the number of births dropped down a cliff, but people do continue getting older. Canadian hospitals are severely understaffed. The average wait time to see a specialist is over 3 months, and it takes another 3 months between seeing that specialist and getting treatment. These figures vary between provinces. In 3 of them, the average wait time from GP to treatment is over a year for non-emergency cases. Many things about Canadian healthcare work really well, but contrary to popular belief, it is not free. One study calculated that the middle group of earners who make slightly over $90,000 per year and contribute around $38,000 in taxes spent $8,000 of those tax dollars on paying for Canada's healthcare. The perception that healthcare is free in Canada is because people are not directly billed for medical services. But this system is paid for through taxes. And contributions also vary by family type. A family with 2 parents and 2 children earns on average over $170,000, and over $17,000 of its tax contributions is spent on healthcare. This comes down to over $1,400 per month, whereas a single parent with 2 children contributes around $400 per month. This is what this study called the cost of health insurance, which is a politically charged term. They frame this system as mandatory health insurance and make the argument that Canadian healthcare needs more private sector investment. Critics say that this will only increase costs and will lead to more inequality. But why it matters to this story is because the cost of healthcare has increased substantially, by as much as 240% since 1997, which is significantly more than overall consumer prices. This trend, where prices are increasing faster than income, has been going on for decades, but it accelerated in recent years. Unless this is reversed, it will push people over the edge and into living with poverty. According to official figures, about 10% of Canadians live in poverty. But this figure is measured by only looking at a person's income. This government report acknowledges that income alone fails to capture the full experience of living with poverty. For example, they also found that 16.9% of respondents reported being in food insecurity. One could argue that not having enough food is poverty, and that a different definition is needed. Food Banks Canada did its own research.
What our study did was take an indicator, a measurement that they've used in Europe for decades called the Material Deprivation Index.
In simple words, they looked at essentials like clothes, dental care, transportation, and unexpected expenses, and found that 25% of Canadians struggle to pay 2 or more essential items. Using this benchmark for poverty, only people who are 65 years or older came close to that official poverty rate of 10%. The worst off are single-parent households, and as much as 30% of people between ages 18 and 30 lives with poverty.
We find out today from the Food Banks Association of Canada that now a record-smashing 25% of Canadians live in poverty after 9 years of his taxes, his deficits, and his doubling housing costs. Why is he going ahead with the same wackonomics that caused the poverty in order to solve it?
Whenever such reports broke, Poilievre was there.
We have single moms who are putting water in their kids' milk because they cannot afford the cost of groceries.
An increasing number of Canadians is prioritizing cost over nutritional value, which affects health.
Whatever fits the budget is whatever I'm eating for the day.
Hardly able to make ends meet with the price of food.
Half of Canadians are less than $200 away from being unable to pay all their bills.
So you're very trapped in kind of what you have and just maintaining that. There's not really any moving forward.
The median credit card debt is $9,000, student loans $14,000, and vehicle loans $20,000. If we compare this to the most common assets, we see that the median bank deposits are $26,000, and most wealth is tied up in retirement assets and family homes. So what happens in the long term when people are no longer able to afford a house? Well, that's not a hypothetical. To qualify for a mortgage in Canada, you need to earn at least $187,000. This is more than a person makes in the top 10% of earners. In some cities like Vancouver and Toronto, you need to make substantially more than what a person makes in the top 10% to even qualify for a mortgage. While other cities like Calgary and Montreal have it a lot easier. For most people, the only way to buy a house is to be in the top 2 to 3% of earners, or have multiple high earners in a household, or you need money from elsewhere, like a rich family member. If this continues to be the case, next generations will not own their house, and since this is where most wealth is accumulated, it will widen the wealth gap between those who own homes and those who never will.
Justin Trudeau could be poised for the worst defeat in the history of the Liberal Party.
I advise the Governor-General that we need a new session of Parliament.
Justin Trudeau has been the face of government since 2015, and by extent, the face of its failing policies.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister's taxes, debt, inflation, and promises, Canadians are hungry.
Poilievre has been a member of parliament since 2004, and he held several cabinet positions under Stephen Harper before being chosen the leader of the Conservative Party in 2022, making him the face of the opposition.
The leader of the opposition.
This from a guy who, if he were made of chocolate, he would eat himself.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I was a high school teacher before getting into politics, and I'm having a little trouble remembering what exactly the job that the leader of the opposition had before getting into politics.
As an outsider, I'm always amazed how the House of Commons feels like stand-up comedy. Politicians look for clever ways to insult each other, and Poilievre is quite good at that. Canada's extreme challenges provided plenty of ammunition for his political theater, but beyond the spectacle lies a painful reality. Whereas previous generations entered the workforce with the winds in their backs and could expect their incomes to rise through their working lives, today that's different. And people are getting upset. Take a short moment to subscribe to my channel if you liked this video. It helps out more than you might think.